The world is hurting right now, and it's time to rise up. As we lift ourselves up in body, mind, and spirit, we can reach out to others and be a light in a sea of darkness. Welcome to the Movement for Global Health with your host, Dr. Mary Zennett.
Our world is hurting right now. So how do we pick up the pieces? We can start with health. Hi, I'm Dr. Mary Zennett, your host on this podcast, The Movement for Global Health. Today, we are privileged to introduce our guest, Rupina Meer. Rupina is a board-certified holistic health coach who has learned from luminaries like Dr. Deepak Chopra, Dr. Andrew Weil, Dr. Sarah Gottfried, and Dr. Mark Hyman. And she is the founder of a wildly successful mind, body, spirit health coaching practice called Zentrition. Rupina, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure being with you.
Yes, it's so wonderful. Please tell us a bit about your journey, how you got to this point where you teach women from all over the world how to balance their hormones.
Absolutely. So I've had multiple dark nights of the soul with my own health, which is really what propelled me down this path because I always say I didn't choose this path, it chose me. Previous to this career path, I have an MBA. I was steadily climbing the corporate ladder, fueling myself with sugar and caffeine, like many of your listeners. I was hurtling through life at 95 miles per hour, a raging self-critic with no time to cook, surviving on frozen monstrosities devoid of any nutrient density. And I had no idea that my processed diet, high in refined carbs, was literally inviting those rogue cancer cells to make a snuggly home in my body. And my addiction to high stress living and suffering was perpetuating these hormonal imbalances. So, fast forward to 2012, when I not only healed myself from cravings and adrenal fatigue, but cervical cancer, that I felt compelled to create this program called Hormone Harmony, which is really based on the functional medicine paradigm of teaching women how to eat, breathe, sleep, supplement, and most importantly, self-regulate and how to manage your nervous system. Because if you don't manage stress, it manages you, causing a worsening 95% of all disease. And so that was really the genesis of the program. And I feel that my training is at the intersection of nutrition science, behavior change, and human optimization. And I'm most inspired and fulfilled when I read those personal testimonials from women whose lives I've impacted and who have overcome themselves through this paradigm.
Wow. Why do hormones control how we look and feel? And what are some signs and symptoms when they're out of balance?
Sure. So hormones are like messengers between our emotions and our physiology. And they're literally, like you said, they're the holy grail that control how we look and feel. They control everything from your energy, weight, memory, mood, libido, your hair and skin quality, and your resilience to stress. So starting around age 35, 40, during the turbulent years of perimenopause, the hormones start misfiring. And that can lead to a litany of symptoms, everything from sudden, what we call hot flashes, sudden heat in the upper body, heart palpitations as if there's an intruder in your room, sleepless nights. We call it tired but wired, where you're fatigued and burnt out, but then when you try to sleep, you just have endless sleepless nights, raging cravings for salt or sugar, that muffin top or abdominal obesity that won't budge no matter what you do, and old tips and tricks of calorie restriction and insanity workouts just no longer move the needle, brain fog, memory issues, feeling like you have too many windows, like sometimes we have too many tabs or windows open in our computer, feeling that way in our brain, and this sense of overwhelm, and wondering what happened to that sharp-witted brain of yours, and that's sort of sapping your productivity. So those are some of the common symptoms.
Now, when these symptoms are happening, how do women know that it's their hormones, or do they know?
That's a great question. So yeah, actually, most women have not do not realize that there is one common thread tying all these symptoms, and that indeed is hormones misfiring. And the truth is that, 80% of adult women experience this, but sadly, the conventional medicine system and fitness just haven't provided the answers. It's like the rules of metabolism have changed, but no one has bothered to inform these women. And so they're often escorted out of their doctor's office, just patronized and saying, well, you're just getting older, get used to it, or here's a prescription for an antidepressant, or the antiquated eat less, exercise more advice, which is the antithesis of what they should be doing to restore harmony and balance back to their hormones. So, ladies, I'm going to break it down. This is real. It is not in your head. It is not your fault. It's especially not your fault. And it's not a design flaw where something goes awry in your body around age 35 or 40, but it's really brought on by hormonal imbalance from massive unremitting stress, our fast food lifestyles, sugar, alcohol, and just running from task to task. Because hormones exist in this exquisite yet fragile balance to each other. So it's kind of like how a lock fits into a key. So there's this, think of it as the hormonal orchestra, all these different hormones, but cortisol, your main stress hormone, is the conductor of the hormonal orchestra. So if cortisol is out of whack, then it's going to jam up the progesterone receptor, or it's going to jam up the thyroid receptor, which is responsible for your master metabolism. And it's going to wreak havoc. So oftentimes what we do with what I do with my clients is that we often, the first line is to get cortisol and manage stress and self-regulate, because oftentimes we don't need direct interventions with thyroid or the other hormones, because once cortisol is in its sweet spot, then the other hormones will also fall into place. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes people do need direct interventions, but oftentimes that will address it.
It's so significant, and I will be honest with you, it has a personal meaning to me because my mom had a lot of health challenges, and one of them was hormones. Okay, from the time we were born, I mean, she had a lot of hormonal issues, and back in the day, okay, all they knew how to do was either send you home or prescribe a hormone replacement, and there was no balance, no in between, no acknowledgement. And I know how she suffered. I mean, she was bedridden.
Right. Well, sadly, nothing much has changed. It's the same thing. They still send you home with like an antidepressant or HRT, and there's really not much training or education around, how to change the way your diet impact your hormones or your sleep and your nervous system and all of that. There's just none of that conversation going on in conventional medicine.
Oh, so this is so important to get this message out to women. It's like you're raising the flag. It's like, ladies, stop. There's more going on. There's more going on. And I'm going to tell you personally, that hormone replacement therapy, I'm not, if you need it, you've had everything else, fine. But if you don't need it, don't take it. My mom ended up getting cancer secondary to the hormone replacement. She was on it for years because she'd go in every month, they'd renew the prescription. And this is it's just such untold pain and suffering. And none of these other issues were ever addressed, ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, HRT can come with some serious risks, and yeah.
And it's not to say, I mean, the take-home message is if you need it, by all means,
Exactly.
take it. However,
Exactly.
do everything else in your power to
Exactly.
be balanced, stable, get the cortisol back on track. Now, let's circle back a little bit and talk more about what happens in midlife. Why this gets so severe.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, it's just that because there's something called like I said earlier, cortisol is the conductor of that hormonal orchestra, and all the hormones are made out of this cholesterol-like substrate called pregnenolone. So when cortisol is out of whack, there's something called pregnenolone steal that happens. So cortisol is making more of itself at the expense of all the other adrenal and sex hormones. So it's jamming up your thyroid hormone, which is responsible for your master metabolism. It's impacting your estrogen, which is responsible for that juicy and plump skin of your youth. So when cortisol, because we're just dealing with ubiquitous, and gosh, what a year everybody's had with this pandemic and all of that. I mean, stress is ubiquitous. You can't control that, but you can control how you respond to it. You can control how you react versus respond to it. And so that is going to make a huge difference on whether you're going to continue to manifest disease chemistry or a healthy, balanced hormone. So it really, like I said earlier, it really comes down to either you manage your stress or it manages you by causing or worsening 95% of all disease.
Wow. So, but your take-home message is it's never too late.
Absolutely.
Get the help. Get the help.
Yes.
Because this can be effectively managed. I think that's really the take-home message.
Absolutely.
You've suffered long enough, too long.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. In fact, that's what I teach in my Hormone Harmony program, is that you can have the effortless energy and weight loss that you enjoyed in your youth just by making these little shifts in your in the way you eat and sleep and breathe and manage your stress. And that's, small hinges swing open big doors. So these small shifts, which I'd like to share some of my top 3 shifts with your listeners, will make a big impact.
Oh, we'd love to hear some of your evidence-based secret sauce for nudging these hormones back into balance.
Okay, absolutely. So yeah, certainly. The first thing is shift number 1 is what I call the elimination diet. Maybe some of your listeners are rolling their eyes when they hear the word elimination diet, because everybody's tried, keto and paleo or vegan or pegan, as Dr. Mark Hyman likes to call it. But I'm not. This does not involve the usual dietary suspects. So you can rest assured that it's not about that. But did you know that your belief systems are your biggest endocrine disruptors? Do you have certain repeating negative memes keep playing that tired song in your head, like, oh, I'm never going to lose this weight? Or my mother had the BRCA gene, and so I'm doomed to get breast cancer. Or my dad had diabetes, so I'm just always dealing with wonky blood sugar. And so the psychology informs physiology, and the immune system is always eavesdropping on your thoughts and your belief systems and manifesting that exact disease chemistry. So, what ladies, a life has been entrusted to you. Treat that life with tenderness and kindness. Imagine this. Imagine if you were to bring in an animal from the shelter, and then treat it sometimes the way you treat yourself. Deprive it of good food, deprive it of sunshine, deprive it of sleep, forgive it for nothing, deny it grace and love. You would never do this to another life form, yet you do it to yourself. So the fastest way to change your physical being is through sound. And by that, I mean the sound of your own voice and your own words and thoughts. So take a moment and reflect on what is that constant chatter and that you're saying to yourself, oh, you're so lazy, you're so pathetic, you can't get it together, you know, what is that voice in your head? Because that is your biggest endocrine disruptor. And so the elimination challenge is I challenge you to eliminate guilt, worry, resentment, anger, bitterness for a week, a day, an hour, 10 minutes, or 10 seconds, whatever is available to you, and watch your hormones flourish and bloom, because that is the biggest thing that is going to help. That internal self-talk is going to have the biggest impact.
And I really appreciate what you said. If it's 10 seconds, if that's where it begins, that's your start. It's never too small. It's never too, it's those minute by minute choices that you make those shifts, and then it builds on one another. Because I know I hear people all the time, you know, I tried for a day. Well, a day, that's an eternity if you've struggled with these beliefs for decades.
Exactly.
Take a few seconds.
Yes.
Be good to yourself.
Yes, and give yourself the be patient. Exactly. It's not something that you've had this voice in your head for 30, 40, 50 years. It's not going to be easy to just eradicate that in a second. So have a lot of patience and grace and kindness for yourself as you go through this. And just say, okay, when you catch yourself like, okay, here I go again saying that I can't do this or this weight loss thing is hard, just get really conscious of your unconscious thoughts, and then replace that with something else. That's called, you know, you're creating new neural circuits. That's the science of neuroplasticity. So you're pruning those old synaptic connections and sprouting new ones. And it does take time and it does take effort, but it can be very powerful. Also, Dr. Masaru Emoto, the Japanese scientist, had done these experiments with high-speed photography on frozen crystals of water. And some of the crystals were exposed to positive emotions like prayer and love and kindness. And those formed these brilliant snowflake-like patterns, just beautiful, coherent patterns. And then the crystals that were exposed to I hate you and anger and resentment formed these incoherent, really, it's almost like how a cancer would look like under the microscope. They just form these horrific incoherent patterns. And what do you think the human body is? We're, you know, 75-80% water.
Right.
So it's that is evidence that, you know, how your thoughts your impacts your physiology to such an extent. And it was beautiful when he showed the photography of those crystals. I'm sure perhaps many of your listeners are familiar with his work, but if not, definitely check out Dr. Masaru Emoto.
Yeah, how do you
And
spell his last name? Emoto?
Emoto, Emoto. Yeah.
Emoto. Yeah, I've seen it. It's powerful, powerful to witness and experience, and to think for our listeners that that is what's going on within the person.
Exactly.
That those deformities, the twisting and all that, like you said, Rupina, like a cancer cell, from the thoughts and from the words. They have energy, they have power.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
a minute at a time, if that's what it takes, it's a quantum leap. It really is. It really is. So any other secrets?
Yes, certainly.
Those hormones.
So the second shift I would say is to face the big fat lie. So all the hormones, I think I mentioned this before, are made from cholesterol. But there's been so much fear mongering about saturated fat and cholesterol, and it's just very hard to break through
Right.
that misinformation barrier. But cholesterol is imperative for healthy hormones. And it's the building block of the adrenal hormones, the cortisol and the aldosterone, which help us cope with the stress of day-to-day living. So actually, a low-fat or a no-fat diet does not provide the substrate for healthy hormones. I've had so many clients, younger women, even before perimenopause, that they just stopped having their cycle and amenorrhea. And I'm like, when I looked at their food diary, they
Wow.
were just subsisting with all this craze. We're so influenced by the media and this fascination with being thin and skinny, no matter what your ideal weight is supposed to be. And so these women are starving themselves and just eschewing fat. Fat is the most vilified macronutrient. And I'm like, well, you're not consuming enough fat to make the
Right.
cholesterol, which is the substrate for all of your hormones. So they actually stop having their cycle entirely. And once
Exactly.
I fixed that and just added back in some healthy fats in their diet, such as salmon or avocado, nuts, olives, olive oil, um, their cycle suddenly came back, and all of those symptoms were disappeared. So really
Wow.
it's about no longer, it's sad that the word fat and the macronutrient fat is the same word in the English language, right? Because uh, it's totally, now of course when it comes to fats, quality is king, right? So I'm not talking about those industrial omega-6
No,
oils that people are
no,
consuming with canola oil and
no.
corn oil, or oh gosh, yeah, that will definitely eviscerate your health and create
Right.
inflammation and all the other diseases. But I'm talking about the healthy fats, um, like I said previously, the avocados, almonds, salmon, fatty cold water fatty fish, Atlantic salmon, those are extremely healing.
Mm-hmm.
And and
Mm-hmm.
and so it's really time to bust that fat myth.
Yeah, once and for all, because as you say, Rupina, every week it seems like there's some new craze, and
Exactly.
it's just natural. You get on
Exactly.
Facebook, you get on, you read the magazines, whatever. It's like, oh, finally. But then
Yes.
it's more digging oneself into a
Exactly.
hole that your metabolism is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And
Exactly.
then you've got to take a reset once and for all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And studies have shown that low cholesterol is actually a bigger risk for heart disease and
Yes,
mortality than high
yes,
cholesterol.
yes.
And elderly people with low cholesterol died twice as
Mhm.
often as elderly people with higher levels.
Yes.
So it's just antiquated advice, but you
Mm.
won't, people still have this fat phobia. Like when I tell my clients, well, you need to have more fats, they're like, oh, but I have a history of cholesterol and heart disease. Are you
Mhm.
sure this is serving me? I'm like, you're going to have to empty your cup of
Mhm.
this antiquated info, because if you can't empty your cup, there is no more room in it to learn things that are really moving the needle. And so it's just been so much misinformation, and people are so petrified of fat. And to this day I hear it. To this day
Oh,
people,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And what they don't understand is about inflammation. So, like you said earlier, because I do training on these vegetable oils, okay, people think they're doing the right thing with
Exactly.
these heart healthy
Yeah.
vegetable oils, whereas the inflammation is just exploding. And I'll be honest with you, there are doctors that are saying the people that end up in the ICUs from COVID are much more likely to have consumed decades of this vegetable oil, heart healthy vegetable oil,
Exactly.
canola,
Yes.
safflower, corn
Sunflower,
oil.
safflower,
Right,
exactly.
right. And lots of it. So, this is such an important message to our listeners. First and foremost, what Rupina is saying has been documented, well documented by medical experts. It's like breaking the old mold of what we were taught. This is cutting edge information from very highly respected doctors, and it's research based. So, but we've got to keep our inflammation down. And as you said earlier, Rupina, all that's in the mind and your words, they are either pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. So we need to move the dial to the anti-inflammatory.
Exactly, exactly. I couldn't agree more. And then shift number 3 is something to tap into the miracle of heart-brain coherence. So when you tap into this magical state and have this perfect synchronicity of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, when those are in harmony, you get beat-to-beat cardiac coherence, which you can actually see on a cardiac monitor.
Wow.
And when you're there, you actually are producing more of what's called the mother hormone, DHEA, from the adrenal. So when we live in a heart-centered way, and when we're in this kind of loving state, not so much in our head and more into our heart, we actually are producing hormone balancing, which is fascinating to me.
Wow.
And you can rewire your entire biochemistry with this 10-minute technique that I learned from Greg Braden called heart-brain coherence. It turns on over 1,300 different biochemical reactions, from immune response to turning off your anti-aging hormones to creating super memory. And get this 10-minute technique lasts for up to 6 hours. They've measured that by a rise in a key immune marker called SIG-A, secretory immunoglobulin A, and that is elevated for 6 hours after doing this technique. So I'm going to break it down for your listeners and walk them through it. It just encompasses 3 small steps. Step number 1 is to just shift your focus from the area of your brain into your heart. Take the elevator down and just touch your heart, because your awareness will always go where you feel the touch. So just feel the pulsating beat of your heart and just step into it. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is just begin to breathe a little bit more slowly. So when you do that, and pretend as if your breath is coming from your heart. So 5-second inhale, 5-second out, exhale. When you do that, you're signaling your nervous system that it's okay to turn your attention inward and to go inwards to create, and you're not in any kind of danger, that it's safe to turn your attention inward. So that's very important. So just slow down your breathing. And then step number 3 is really evoke one or more of the following emotions: gratitude, appreciation, care, or compassion. Really step into regenerative feelings, such as when you birthed your babies, or you held your fur baby, or just, feel into it with all your senses, what it smelled like, what it felt like, what you were tasting, what you were touching, and really step into it. And that is going to create that beautiful harmony of the two nervous systems, and it's really, really powerful.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's something our listeners can take with them
Exactly.
from our talk today.
Yeah, because I've seen so many clients coming to me who've had trauma, and they've worked with a therapist for years, and that's great. But when you're only processing trauma from the vantage of the brain is a polarity organ, so it always judges everything as right, wrong, good, bad, success, failure. But the heart is not a polarity organ. There are
Mm-hmm.
actually 40,000 specialized cells called sensory neurites
Mm-hmm.
in the heart. And this was published in the Journal of Neurocardiology.
Mm-hmm.
That name alone should tell you there is actually a brain in the heart. So
Exactly.
the heart is not a polarity organ. And when you can process these emotions from the
Yes.
vantage of the heart,
Mm-hmm.
observe them, learn the lessons, and then let them go, that's the moment that creates extraordinary healing. Actually, Candace Pert, the brilliant Harvard MD, wrote about that in her book, Molecules of Emotion, that when we can
Mm-hmm.
metabolize these emotions from the vantage of the heart
Mm-hmm.
and process them out through our sweat, urine, breath, that is the moment of healing. So it's such a
Wow.
powerful technique, and it's something you can do anytime when you're driving. If somebody cuts you off and you
Yeah.
have you're triggered by it and you have your knee-jerk reaction, you
Mm-hmm.
just get into your heart, slow down your breathing, touch your heart, slow it
Wow.
down, and then just evoke a regenerative feeling.
Wow. And now to circle back at our original topic, hormones, all the strategies you're talking about help to balance our hormones.
Exactly, exactly. Like I said, this produces the heart has a very regenerative effect on the
Right.
hormones as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
And your mother hormone DHEA. So yeah, very powerful. So this does not, like I said, this I like these shifts because they're sort of unconventional,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not. Of course, we do work with diet and all of that, but these are really more working with self-regulating and managing the nervous system, which can be really move the needle in terms of balancing your
Absolutely.
hormones.
Really, they're
Yeah.
foundational. No
Yeah,
matter what's going
exactly.
on, these are foundational skills. And when you think about it, that these skills can then impact your hormones, which affects, I mean, it's your life. These
Absolutely.
hormones are
Yeah,
every aspect of our lives are
exactly.
regulated by hormones.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So, where can our listeners learn more about your courses and how to be in touch with you?
Absolutely. So I have a free gift for your listeners too. They can just go to Zen dash Trition, TRITION.com /quiz. And that gives a very, this was adapted from my work with Dr. Sarah Gottfried, and it's a subjective quiz, but it really zeroes in on some of the main imbalances that that particular person is dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've cleared my calendar for 10 spots just for your listeners so I can give them a custom assessment to dive deeper into what are the hormonal imbalances unique to them and figure out a blueprint. So just go to zen-trition.com /quiz. And then if you can just put that in the show notes, there's another link that I put
Mm-hmm.
where they can just book a call with me. And we'll do a deep dive into where they are and where they'd like to be with their hormones. I'll give them a custom assessment and then create a personalized prescription.
That's beautiful. And so again, it's Zen dash, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yes.
Trition,
Yeah.
TRITION dot
Correct.
com /quiz.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So it's just think of it like the word nutrition. It's a holistic approach to nutrition. So
Right,
it's Zentrition. Yeah.
right, right. Any other final words before we close?
I would say that in this time, in this post-pandemic environment,
Mhm.
stress is just so ubiquitous and none of us can escape it. Whether you're living in $1 million mansion or you're living in a little shack, it doesn't come down to how much money you have or how much resources or what type of work you do, but it's really about how you are responding, the meaning,
Yes,
the lens, the filter through which you're perceiving that event, which is going to either create a healthy, balanced hormones or disease chemistry. Dis-ease is really, when you break that word down, the body is just not at ease, and it all starts with your
exactly.
thoughts. So it's really imperative to learn how to self-regulate
Mhm.
because that will be the greatest determinant of your health and hormones.
Thank you so much. Rupina, this has been absolutely delightful. So
My
thank you
pleasure.
so much for all this incredible information. And we'll post your link below, and we encourage our listeners to be in touch with you.
Absolutely, it'll be my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So that is our show for today. And we want to again express our heartfelt thanks to Rupina Meer. She's given us amazing pearls and insights. And we'll have her link below, and tune in next week and learn more about how you can be a part of this global health movement. Be well.
Take care.